The small trading outpost was hot and full of dust. Yalon, a human cargo runner, stepped off his ship to refill supplies. He walked past rusted machines, broken market stalls, and creatures that barely glanced his way. Most of them didn't like humans around here, but he didn't care. He had one job: fuel up and leave before anyone caused trouble. As he bent down to check a hose on his ship, he felt something tug his sleeve. He turned quickly, ready to yell, but stopped when he saw a small alien child. She looked no older than 6 or 7, her skin a soft purple, her hair tangled. Her big violet eyes stared up at him with fear, hope, and something else he couldn't name. "Please," she whispered, "you must marry my mom." Yalon blinked, thinking he misheard her. "Come again?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. The girl lowered her eyes, her hands shaking. "She's kind, really kind, but no one helps us. They say we're cursed." He crouched slowly so he could see her face better. "What's your name?" he asked. "Gently, Luma," she said, voice almost gone in the wind. "And what's your mom's name?" "Vera." Before he could ask anything else, a group of locals nearby shouted, "Hey, human, stay away from them. That family brings bad luck." The girl flinched and backed away quickly, hiding behind a crate. Yalon stood and turned to face the shouting alien men. He didn't reply, just stared until they looked away. Then he looked back, but Luma was gone, vanished like smoke. He should have just walked away. He should have finished his job and left. But something in the child's voice stayed in his head. Something in her eyes, the way they pleaded. Later that day, Yalon asked an old merchant at the market about them. The merchant spat on the ground. "Her husband died in the border war. They say it was her fault." "What did she do?" Yalon asked. "Nothing. That's the problem," the merchant grunted. "Didn't protect him. Didn't cry loud enough. Didn't curse the enemy strong enough. Whatever excuse they needed." He paused, then added, "That child's been begging strangers for months, but no one listens." Yalon went back to his ship and sat for a long time. He didn't believe in curses. He believed in action, in choices. So when the sun dipped low and the wind started picking up, he locked his ship and walked toward the edge of the outpost, where the buildings stopped and the wasteland began. He saw a small figure sitting on a cracked stone slab. It was Luma, her arms around her knees. When she saw him, she stood, quickly, worried. "You came back," she whispered. "I told you I might," he said, trying to smile. She took his hand without asking and led him through winding paths between broken walls and dry bushes. Soon, they reached a collapsed shelter made of metal, scraps, and cloth. There, standing barefoot, was Vera. Her long dark hair was tied back. Her clothes were patched and worn. She held a small broken tool in her hands, trying to fix something near a water barrel. When she saw him, she froze. Luma ran to her. "He came. Mom, I told you he'd come." Vera's eyes met Jalen's, and something passed between them. Not fear, not anger, just quiet surprise. She bowed slightly. "I'm sorry if my daughter disturbed you," she said softly. Her voice was calm, but tired, so tired she didn't. Yalon replied, "She just asked me something unusual." Vera looked down, her face turning a shade darker. Embarrassed, she asks that to anyone who stops, hoping for a miracle. "She told me you were kind," Yalon said, "but I can see it myself." Vera didn't speak for a moment. Then she invited him to sit under the broken canopy. Luma brought a chipped mug with some kind of warm drink. It smelled strange but sweet. Yalon sipped it slowly while watching the sky darken. "Why won't the village help you?" he asked. Quietly, Vera looked out into the wasteland. "I was married to a soldier. He died fighting in a war we never asked for," she said. "They blamed me for not mourning the right way, and then they just stopped seeing us." Luma curled into her mother's side. They said we should leave, but we don't have anywhere to go. Yalin looked at them, both the girl who was brave enough to ask for help, and the woman too proud to beg. Something tugged at his heart. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to walk away, not this time. Yalin returned the next morning, carrying a small box. Inside were simple things: Nutri-bars, purified water packets, and a warm blanket. He knocked gently on the metal panel that acted as their door. Luma peeked out, eyes lighting up. "You came back," she said, smiling wide. Yalin knelt down and handed her the box. "Just a few things to help," he said. "You can share it with your mom." Vera stepped into view slowly. Her clothes were the same as yesterday, but her hair was tied tighter. Neater. She looked at the box, then at Yalin. "You didn't have to," she said quietly. "I know," he replied, "but I wanted to." They sat outside again, this time under a makeshift awning. The heat was softer in the morning, and the sky had a pale blue hue. Luma sat between them, munching happily on a Nutri-bar. Yalin noticed her legs were thin to thin and her cheeks sunken. They weren't just struggling, they were starving. "What's your full name?" Yalin asked, glancing at Vera. She hesitated, then answered, "Vera Entali, widow of Soldier Khan of the 3rd Windblade Unit." Yalin nodded. "My name's Yalin Keed, trader pilot of the small ship Lucky Break." For a while, they didn't speak, just listened to the desert wind. Then Yalin said, "The people at the outpost, they really believe you're cursed." Vera's face tightened. "Yes," she whispered, "after Kahan died. The winds changed, crops failed, a fire destroyed part of the village, and they blamed you." "They needed to blame someone," she replied, "and a quiet widow is easy." Luma leaned against her mom's side, dozing off in the warmth. Vera gently ran her fingers through her daughter's hair. "She's strong," Yalin said. "She asked a stranger to marry you." Vera chuckled softly, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "She believes in hope more than I ever did," she said. "She still thinks someone will save us." Yalin looked at the broken pieces of their shelter. A cracked solar panel, torn fabric, and a food supply that barely existed. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I just fly around and make small trades. Even small help feels like a miracle to those with nothing," Vera said, her voice gentle. Later that day, Yalin walked back to the outpost to gather parts. When he returned, he found someone had carved a word into the side of his ship. "Human lover." The letters were scratched deep. Filled with red dust, he ran his hand over them, frowning. Then he turned and saw 2 alien men watching from a distance. They spit on the ground and walked away without a word. Yalin didn't tell Vera about it. Instead, he spent the next few days repairing the old solar panel. He rewired their broken light fixture, added a proper filter to their water collector. Every evening, he sat and shared food with them. Luma talked more each day about her dreams, her favorite sky colors, her drawings. One night, she brought out a stack of old paper sheets covered in charcoal sketches. "This is you," she said, pointing to a stick figure with a small ship. "And this is us," she added, showing a happy drawing of her, Vera, and Yalin standing together under a sky with 2 suns. Vera looked away, blushing. I told her not to do that," she muttered. "It's all right," Yalin said softly. "I like it." That night, Vera stayed outside longer than usual. They watched the stars come out. "You don't have to keep coming," she said, eyes on the sky. "I know," he answered. "But I want to." She nodded once, then whispered, "I'm not used to kindness." A few nights later, Luma fell sick. She had a fever, and her small body shook in her mother's arms. Yalin rushed to his ship, grabbed a medkit, and returned with cooling packs and basic medicine. He stayed the whole night, checking her vitals and keeping her hydrated. Vera never left her daughter's side, and Yolan never left the room. In the early morning, Luma's fever broke. Vera looked at Yolan, tears in her eyes. "Thank you." She whispered, "You saved her." "I just helped," he said. "You saved her every day before I ever showed up." That moment, something changed. Not in words, not in touch, just in the air between them. Vera's walls had a small crack, and Yolan felt something stirring in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't just helping anymore, he was staying. The sky turned red by late afternoon, not the soft red of sunset, but a harsh, angry hue. The wind picked up fast, carrying dust, sharp and dry. Yolan stood outside his ship, tightening the outer panels. He looked toward the village and saw people rushing to seal their homes. An alert pinged on his wrist display. "Warning, Category 4, dust storm incoming." He paused, then turned his head sharply. Vera and Luma, they had no sealed shelter. No proper doors, just cloth, scrap, and a patched roof. Without thinking, he grabbed his gear and ran. The wind had already started to howl. By the time he reached their broken home, sand stung his face like needles. He pounded on the metal sheet they used as a door. "Vera?" he shouted. "You need to come with me, now." She opened the flap, shielding Luma with her body. Her face was covered in a cloth wrap, her eyes wide. "We'll manage." "No, you won't." Yolan cut her off. "This is a killer storm. I've seen it before." He reached in and lifted Luma into his arms without waiting for permission. She was coughing already. Vera followed, grabbing only a small pouch from the corner. Together, they pushed against the wind. Each step felt like a battle Yolan could barely see, but he knew the way. Finally, the ship came into view like a shadow in the dust. He hit the panel, and the hatch hissed open. Once inside, he set Luma down on a seat and sealed the door. The sound of the storm became a distant roar. Filters whirred to life, cleaning the air. Vera dropped to her knees beside her daughter. Luma coughed again, but looked up and smiled weakly. "We're in his skyboat," she whispered. Yolan knelt beside them, checking her pulse. "She'll be fine now," he said gently. It was getting dangerous out there. Vera looked around the inside of the ship. It was small but clean. She sat quietly, her eyes wide. "As if in another world. I've never been inside one before," she said softly. Yolan gave her water and a blanket. "You can stay here until the storm ends." The storm lasted 2 days. 2 long days of red skies, roaring winds, and swirling dust outside the reinforced glass inside the ship. It was peaceful. Yolan gave them one of the sleeping pods, and he took the control chair. They shared meals, real meals, not scraps, and slowly, a strange comfort grew between them on the second evening. Luma showed Yolan a worn-out paper, a drawing again. "This time of a small house under 2 suns. This is where I want to live," she said. He looked at it carefully. "And who's this?" he asked, pointing to the stick figures. "That's me," she grinned. "That's Mommy. And that's you." Vera looked away, hiding her blush behind a water cup. Yolan smiled. "You drew my beard too big." "It's part of the style." Luma giggled. Later that night, when Luma was asleep, Vera and Yolan sat near the ship's window. The storm outside was still strong. The stars above were hidden. "I haven't seen her this happy in months," Vera said. "She's special." Yolan replied. "Strong, too." There was a pause. Then Vera turned to him. "Back on my planet. If a child asks someone to marry their parent, it's not just a silly wish." Yolan tilted his head, listening. "It's tradition," she continued. "Ancient. If the child believes someone can protect and love the family, she asks, and if the other agrees, it becomes real, even if the mother doesn't ask herself. She can say no," Vera said quickly. "But Luma believes in you." Yolan looked down at his hands. Rough hands, hands used to engines and weapons. "I've never been anyone's future before," he said slowly. "You already are too." Vera whispered. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the ship's soft hum filled the silence. Vera wrapped the blanket tighter around her. "You should sleep," he said gently. "Take the pod tonight, and you." "Take the chair," he smiled. "I've had worse," as she walked to the pod. She paused, then turned, her voice almost too soft to hear. "Thank you for treating us like we matter." Yalan didn't reply, but he didn't look away either. The storm outside may have roared like a monster, but inside that small ship, a seed had been planted, one that would grow into something neither of them expected. When the storm finally passed, the world outside was silent. Dust lay over everything like a thick blanket. The air was still, as if even the wind had fallen asleep. Yalan opened the ship's hatch slowly, checking for danger. The sky was pale orange, and the village looked battered but standing. He turned back and saw Vera and Luma still sleeping peacefully in the sleeping pod. He let them rest while he stepped outside to inspect the damage. The solar panels were dusty, but intact. One outer antenna had snapped, but it was easy to fix. He smiled. His ship had survived worse. Later, Vera emerged with Luma clinging to her arm. They stepped onto the ramp like stepping into a new world. The sun warmed their skin, and for the first time in days, Luma laughed. She twirled around in circles, her feet kicking up red dust. "We're alive," she cheered. Vera smiled faintly, but her eyes were distant. Worried, Yalan noticed it right away. "What's wrong?" he asked. "They'll come," she said, softly. "Who?" "The elders. They won't like that we survived in your ship." He didn't understand right away, but he would soon. By midday, 4 robed figures from the village stood outside the ship. Their faces were hard, their arms crossed. Yalan stepped out to meet them. "Something I can help with?" he asked, calm but firm. One elder, tall and sharp-eyed, stepped forward. "You brought them into your machine," he said. "That goes against the code." "The code?" Yalan repeated, frowning. "No outsider is allowed to mix blood with our cursed ones," the elder growled. Yalan stepped closer. "They're not cursed, they're abandoned." Another elder raised a finger. "And now you walk among us. Defend her, feed her." "The people talk. They always talked," Vera said from behind Yalan, her voice steady. "But now they believe the curse will spread." The elder snapped. "The only thing spreading is kindness," Yalan replied, his voice turning colder. The elders narrowed their eyes. "Then leave," the first one said, "or we will take action." Yalan didn't move, but Vera stepped forward. "Please, Lan," she whispered. "Don't fight them. You're asking me to leave." "I'm asking you to be safe," she said, her eyes begging. "I can protect you," he said. "Both of you." Vera shook her head. "Not if they turn the village against you." "I won't risk that." That night, Yalan packed his gear. He didn't say goodbye, he couldn't, but he left a small data crystal inside their shelter. On it were maps, survival notes, and a short message. "You matter. I'll come back." As he walked through the village to his ship, many eyes followed him, some filled with hate, others with guilt, but none brave enough to speak. He started the engine, and the ship rose into the sky, but his heart didn't rise with it. 3 nights passed. Vera and Luma stayed inside their broken shelter. The people gave them nothing, not even water. Then one night, stone shattered their water barrel. Vera rushed outside and saw 3 young men laughing. One of them held a torch. "Stay away from the human," he shouted, "or we'll burn." The rest next time. Luma cried in her mother's arms. "Where's Yalan?" She sobbed. Vera had no answer. Meanwhile, far above the planet, Yalan stared at the message Luma had once recorded. "You're already our family," her little voice said. He listened to it 10 times. Then he set course for the planet again. He landed in the middle of the outpost. Dust flew as his ship touched the ground. The villagers gathered quickly, murmuring. Yolan stepped out. Not with weapons, but with purpose. He walked past the markets, past the old wells. Straight to the elders' meeting stone. They turned in surprise. "I'm not here to ask," he said loudly. "I'm here to speak." The crowd quieted. "I accept Luma's proposal," he declared. "I ask for Vera's hand in marriage." Gasps rose from the crowd. The elders stood in shock. "You can't," one whispered. "I already did," Yolan said. "I claim the bond by your own tradition." People began whispering. Even those who hated the cursed family were unsure now. Vera stepped into the crowd, eyes wide. "Yolan, what are you doing?" "Standing with you," he said. "Not running." She walked up to him slowly, tears in her eyes. "But they'll let them try," he said. "But you won't stand alone anymore." Luma rushed through the crowd and grabbed Jalen's hand. "You came back," she said, smiling through tears. He knelt beside her. "I told you I would." And in that moment, the crowd didn't matter. The traditions didn't matter. Only the three of them standing together. A human, an alien mother, and her brave little girl. A family born not from blood, but from choice. The silence after Jalen's bold words was heavier than the dust in the air. The villagers stared, some in disbelief, others in quiet awe. The elders looked shaken, unsure what to say. No outsider had ever invoked the ancient bond not like this, not publicly. Vera stood frozen beside Yolan. She felt like the ground might vanish under her feet. Was this real? Was he truly asking for her hand in front of everyone? "You speak boldly, human," one of the elders finally said. "But if you claim the bond, you must follow our sacred ways." "I'll do whatever's required," Yolan replied, his voice calm but firm. "Then you must complete the 3 acts," the elder said, raising a staff carved with runes. Yolan nodded once. "I accept." The crowd parted slowly. Some muttered prayers. Others whispered warnings. Luma clung to her mother's hand, her small fingers squeezing tight. "Mom," she whispered. "He's really doing it." Vera knelt and touched her forehead to Luma's. "Yes, my heart," she whispered. "He is." That evening, the elders summoned Yolan to the village center. The fire pit burned low as the 3 elders stood before him. "The first act is defend," the head elder said. "You must protect what you claim to love." Before Yolan could respond, a horn sounded sharp and sudden. A scout rushed in, gasping. Ground snakes, 4 of them, near the east wells. The crowd shouted. These creatures were fast, venomous, and deadly. Yolan grabbed his sidearm and ran. By the time he reached the well, 2 snakes had already coiled around the water barrels. Villagers kept their distance, afraid. Yolan didn't. "Wait." He slid behind a barrel, aimed, and fired. The plasma shot lit up the dusk. Striking the first snake between the eyes, the second turned toward him. Hissing, it leaped, fast like lightning. But Yolan ducked and swung a metal rod, slamming the creature midair. It crashed to the ground, writhing. Yolan finished it with 1 clean shot. The last 2 slithered back into the cracks. Fleeing, the crowd gasped, then cheered. He had defended their water, their village, their people, back at the fire pit. The elders nodded. "The first act is complete," they said. But to remain, the next morning, they called him again. "The second act is promise," the elder said. "You must swear something of the heart, something no man can fake." Yolan looked at Vera. She stood beside Luma, unsure what he'd say. He stepped forward, then knelt. He didn't speak to the elders, he spoke to her. "To Vera," he said. Voice steady. "I promise this, I will never leave unless you ask me to. I will never speak for you, only beside you. I will protect your daughter as if she were my own." A hush fell over the crowd. Vera's hands trembled, her eyes wide. She had never heard such words from anyone, not even her late husband Yolan reached out and took her hand. Even if no one here accepts me, I will not walk away from you, he said, because you are already my home. Tears fell down her cheeks. The elder raised his staff again. The second act is complete. That night, the stars shone brighter than before. The village was quiet. People no longer turned their backs on Vera and Luma. Some even nodded in silence as they passed. The third day arrived, and so did the final challenge. The third act is gift, said the elder. You must offer something that has meaning. Not gold or trade, but memory and soul. Yalan returned to his ship for hours. No one knew what he was making. When he came back, he carried a small wooden box. Inside was a necklace metal beads, each carved from a different part of his ship. But the centerpiece was a pendant shaped from a piece of broken armor. It was Ken's armor, the same one he found in the wreckage where he first landed. He stepped in front of Vera. This was once part of the man you lost, he said gently. But I reshaped it, reforged it into something new, not to replace him but to honor him. He placed the necklace in her hand. And now, you carry both past and future. Vera covered her mouth, overcome with emotion. She didn't speak, but she nodded. Slowly, the crowd waited. The elder turned to her. Do you accept this gift? Vera looked at Yolan, his eyes steady, waiting, not forcing, not begging, just hoping. Yes, she whispered. I accept. The elder raised both hands. Then the bond is complete, he declared. From this day forward, by our sacred law, you are husband and wife. Luma ran to Yalan and hugged him tight. You're really ours now, she said, smiling wide. Vera walked closer and placed her hand in his. For the first time, she didn't look away. For the first time, she felt safe. The morning air was cool, the sky painted with soft pink clouds. For the first time in many years, the village prepared for a wedding, but this was no ordinary wedding. It was between a human man and an alien widow once called cursed. And now, the same people who once spat in her direction were gathering to watch her take a husband. Yolan stood beside the fire pit, his clothes cleaned and stitched by local hands. On his shoulder sat a single feather given by one of the elder women, sign of trust. Vera stood beneath a canopy of desert silk, her dress made from woven cloth and bits of polished scrap. She looked like royalty, not because of riches, but because she stood tall, proud, and free. Luma stood between them, holding a small flower with petals that shimmered in sunlight. Ready? She asked both of them. Grinning, Yalan nodded. Vera smiled and said, As long as you're beside me. The ceremony was ancient, full of soft songs and symbols. 3 times. Vera and Yalan walked in a circle, holding hands. 3 times, they each spoke words of promise in front of the gathered villagers. Even the elders, once bitter and firm, bowed their heads with respect when the ceremony ended. An old woman approached and placed a smooth stone in Jalen's palm. Now you carry our past, she whispered, then turned to Vera and placed another stone in her hand, and you carry the future together. The couple placed both stones into a sacred bowl of fire. The flames turned blue. Then white, sign that the bond was accepted by the old spirits. The crowd clapped gently, and for the first time since Ken's death, Vera felt truly alive. The feast that followed was small but warm. Simple food, soft music, and laughter that hadn't touched Vera's ears in years. Yalan shared stories of Earth, of growing up under a blue sky, of oceans that never ended. The children gathered around him with wide eyes, listening as if he were a traveler from legend. Later, Luma sat in Jalen's lap, resting her head on his chest. You smell like metal and food. She giggled sleepily. Yalan laughed. That's because I am food to some creatures. She looked up. Not to me. Vera chuckled beside him, her fingers softly brushing his arm as the sun dipped low. A group of villagers approached with gifts, clean fabric, tools, even small fruit baskets. It was their way of saying sorry, of welcoming them into the fold. Yalan accepted each with thanks, but made sure to keep Vera close at every moment. He had seen what fear and isolation looked like on her face. He didn't want to see it ever again. When the stars came out, Vera and Yalan walked together beyond the village. They stood near a broken tower where desert grass now grew between cracks. Yalan looked up, the stars reflected in his eyes. "You know," he said softly, "I didn't come here looking for a family." "I know," Vera replied, "but sometimes family finds us anyway." They sat together in silence. Vera leaned her head on his shoulder. Luma ran in circles nearby, chasing glowing bugs that danced like fireflies. But just as peace settled into their bones, a sound shattered it sharp. Metallic, unnatural. Yalan stood quickly, his hand on his sidearm. Vera lifted Luma into her arms and backed away from the sky. A dark shape descended. Not a storm, not a bird, a ship, sleek, black, unfamiliar, and unmarked. It landed just outside. The village dust blowing in all directions. Villagers came out of their homes, unsure if it was friend or enemy. Yalan stepped forward, blocking Vera with one arm. The ship's hatch hissed open. But no one stepped out. Instead, a voice came. Through a hidden speaker, "Human cargo vessel Lucky Break, your presence here has been noted by Galactic Authority." Yalan frowned. "I'm not under any charges," he shouted back. "Unregistered union between human and alien civilian detected." The voice replied, "Prepare for inspection." Vera's face went pale. "They can't do that," she whispered. "Yes, they can," Yalan said grimly, "but they won't." Luma clung tightly to her mother's dress, her small voice trembling. "Are they going to take him away?" "No," Vera said softly. "They'll have to go through me first." The peaceful wedding day had ended. Now, a new fight had arrived. One that would test not only their bond, but how far Yalan would go to protect the family he chose. Yalan stood at the edge of the village, dust swirling around his boots. The black ship from the Galactic Authority loomed like a shadow from another world. Its engines hummed low, almost growling. Villagers whispered behind him, unsure whether to run or stay. Vera stood close, Luma clutched in her arms. Neither spoke, but their eyes were full of fear. A ramp lowered from the ship, and two figures emerged. They wore dark armor with glowing emblems on their shoulders. One was tall, emotionless, with a scanner in his hand. The other, a woman with silver eyes, looked directly at Yalan. "You are Yalan Kaid," she said flatly. "I am." Yalan replied, calm but ready. "You are accused of forming an unauthorized cross-species union in an unregulated zone," she continued. "I didn't break any laws," he said. The union was by local tradition, witnessed by their elders. The tall agent stepped forward, holding the scanner. "The records show no official request filed with Galactic Relationship Registry." "That's because love doesn't come with paperwork," Yalan said sharply. The silver-eyed woman raised an eyebrow. "Emotional ties are not sufficient," she replied. "Then let me make something clear," Yalan said, stepping between them and his wife. "You're not taking her." Gasps echoed from the villagers. The agents paused, surprised by his boldness. "This planet is unclaimed," Yalan continued. "This village governs itself. Allah, and their law says she is my wife." "You are still a human citizen under the Terran Accord," the woman said. "Then file your complaint with Earth," Lon snapped. "But I'm not going anywhere behind him." The villagers stepped closer, quiet, but united. Even the elders moved forward. One of them raised his staff. "We saw their bond sealed in fire," he said. "He belongs to us now, as much as she does." The agents looked at each other, uncertain. This wasn't just a legal case anymore. It was a cultural wall they didn't want to break. Luma tugged at Vera's sleeve and whispered, "Why don't they see what we see?" Vera smiled sadly, because some people are blind to what matters most. Yalin reached into his pouch and pulled out the wedding stone. He held it up. "This is proof," he said. "This stone carries your past and our future." The woman looked at the villagers, then back at her partner. "There will be consequences," she said quietly. "Let them come," Yolan replied. "We're not afraid anymore." After a long silence, the agents turned without another word. They walked back to their ship and sealed the ramp behind them. Moments later, the engines roared, and the ship lifted into the sky, vanishing into the clouds. The villagers broke into soft cheers. Vera covered her mouth, tears falling silently. Yalin turned to her and opened his arms. She didn't hesitate, she ran to him. Luma followed, hugging both of them at once. That night, under the stars, they sat outside their small home. Yolan had moved his ship nearby. Together, they were building something new, not just shelter, but a life. Luma rested her head on Jalen's lap, her voice soft. "Will they come back?" "Maybe," he said, stroking her hair. "But next time, they'll find more than just a man. They'll find..." A father, Vera, sat beside him, her hand in his. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "You could have left." "But you stayed," Yalin smiled. "I didn't come here to fall in love," he said, "but I did." "And now," he added, "you're not just a widow, and I'm not just a traitor. We're a family." The next day, the village held a second celebration, not for the wedding, but for something greater. Acceptance, unity, a breaking of old curses. Children danced, elders sang, and for the first time, Vera laughed with her whole heart. Yolan helped build water filters, taught young ones how to repair machines. He worked with the people, not above them, and the people saw what Luma had seen all along. The human wasn't just a man. He was their future. Weeks later, a small scout vessel arrived from another outpost. This time, it carried no threats, only a message. Galactic authority will no longer interfere. Your bond has been recorded under special planetary custom laws. Vera held the message in her hands. Smiling, "We're official now," she said. Yol kissed her forehead. "We were official the moment you said yes." Luma danced around them, shouting, "My dad's the bravest in the galaxy." And as the sun set behind the hills, their shadows stretched together, 3 figures walking side by side. A man, a mother, and a child. No longer broken, no longer alone, but whole, a family. Born of stars, forged in dust, and held together by love.